Welcome to AI for Sales and Marketing. My name is Doug Hunter. I'm the principal at Peak Point Solutions, and before that, I was involved in AI, as you can see in the mini resume here, in a couple different companies in a couple different ways. Presenting with me today is Mike Terry. Mike, tell us about yourself real fast.
Thanks, Doug. I'm Mike Terry. I'm the founder and business development consultant at Core Digital Consulting. I've been in business development the last 15 plus years, and the last 2 years have been using extensive AI tools to get additional leads and contacts in the business development world.
Thank you much, Mike. Let me first start off by introducing the agenda for today. We're going to start off with an intro to AI, give you an overview and talk about pros and cons and help you get started today. Then we'll dig in very specifically into marketing AI and sales AI. And then finally, it's our goal that everybody leaves here today either having used AI for the first time or using a new tool for the first time. So in section 4 here, Mike is going to lead us through a hands-on exercise. Now we'll end with Q&A. Now, the material is going to be fairly dense. We're going to go fairly fast. So we'll stop actually for QA for 2 or 3 minutes after every single section. So let me start with a question here, which is, do you really need AI? Now, if you're a news junkie like me, you've probably seen headlines like this. You know, AI is revolutionizing sales coaching, or over here on the marketing side, the CEO's guide to GenAI. This is marketing's sink or swim moment. Now, it sounds like a little bit of hype, doesn't it? And you also see headlines like this: marketing uses for GenAI that will outlive the hype. And there is a lot of hype out there about AI, but there's also a lot of good about AI as well. And what you'll see is our thesis through this presentation is that AI, if used thoughtfully, can help you overcome shortages of time or skill and to do more better. Now, there's 2 key words in here. One word is thoughtfully, which has to do with the cons of AI. You have to understand what they are, and you have to know how to mitigate them. And then there's do more better, and that comes out of the pros of AI. So let's start off by going through a few definitions. First of all, what is AI? AI is a mathematical model that predicts things in a human way based on patterns it found in past data. Now, I've got a couple of words here in bold, and let me use those to unpack the sentence a bit more. The first 2 words are model and predicts. AIs are huge tables of probabilities and weights. They don't actually think, at least not yet. And it actually doesn't know what the answer is. It just knows what is probably next. Things. Now, I always used to think of AI as words, as being around words, because ChatGPT was sucking up all the press. But the deeper I've gotten into AI, I've found out that it can not only do words, but also do images, audio, and numbers as well. It doesn't do numbers as well as audio, as well as images, as well as words, but it's improving dramatically as we go along. And then the patterns it found in past data. The AI is trained on the web. It's books, pictures, videos, movies, web pages. And as you all know, the web is a high quality source of information, which we'll get back to that in a little bit more. Now, there's going to be a cocktail party after this presentation to help you sound really smart and intelligent at the cocktail party. Here's a few other terms you need to know. The first one is AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. And that is an AI which is much more advanced than what we have today. Today's AIs do really, really well on very, very specific tasks. They are not self-learning, and they don't do things broadly well. If you think of Star Trek, Star Wars, Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator and all the AIs, that's the type of AI that we're talking about here, but hopefully in a good way. Now, a subset of AI are GenAIs, generative AIs. That's AIs that can generate new data like words, images, audio, and numbers. And the way they do that is through a mathematical tool called LLMs, or large language models. So when you see term LLM, it's just some of the mathematical underpinnings for GenAI. Now, there's other mathematical underpinnings like natural language processing or diffusion models for images, but LLMs gets most of the press. Now, when you use a GenAI, there's 3 terms that you should know. One is the prompt. The prompt is how you instruct the GenAI. It's both the command and the context. Later in the presentation, Mike's going to talk to you about the 3 R's of prompt writing: role, request, and related materials. Now, the other thing you should know when you're doing a prompt is the length of the context window, which is how long your prompt can be. If you're just asking the AI to generate a cute picture of a little robot like we have up in the upper right-hand corner here, you don't need a very long prompt. If you're asking the AI to write a 2,500 word article on a highly specialized topic for the company's CEO and have it conform to the company's brand guidelines, you need to load up not only the outline of the article, but also your company style guides, plus also the last 10 articles that your CEO has written to get the tone and voice correct. That requires a longer prompt window. Now, the longest models, like ChatGPT 4o that came out last week, have really, really big context windows. 4o has a context window of 125,000 tokens that translates to about 96,000 words. For reference or scale, the average English language novel is 90,000 words long. So the context windows, the length of the prompts now are the length of a small novel, which is probably more than most of us use, but who knows? Finally, the memory. You don't want to have to go upload everything about who you are and what you're trying to do and everything about the company every single time you write a prompt. So memory allows the AI to memorize things about you so you don't have to keep typing it in every single time you use it. Now, as we go through this presentation, I want to talk about the cute little robots in the upper right-hand corner here a couple times to make a couple points about GenAI and to break up the flow a little bit. So for this little guy up here, I asked it for a happy little robot looking up a definition. And so it gave me a picture of a robot looking at a dictionary. But if you look real closely, it doesn't actually say dictionary. It says dictionary, which is an order of magnitude improvement from where these AIs were a year ago. A year ago, it would have just been random lines and squiggles there because the AI knew that there was something in the top of books, but it didn't know that it was actually a title and didn't know it was actually a word or letters. So it's gotten much better, but clearly it's not there yet. Now let's shift and start talking about some of the benefits of AI. This is a study from the Boston Consulting Group, published at the end of last year. Your x-axis is the different functions of a company, ranging from strategy all the way through customer service. And your y-axis is the potential time reduction in that department if you use AI. Now, the obvious challenge here, or excuse me, the obvious winner here is customer service with a 42% reduction in time if you use AI. You know, one recent proof point of this is a company named Klarna that recently introduced an AI chatbot that they claim can replace 700 customer service agents and handle 2/3 of the customer chats. Now, for us on this call, we're all sales and marketing people. It's a mere 28% reduction projected. It's one of the lowest across the company. But if you're the person actually having to do the work, getting 28% of your time back is really significant. You're going to use it to do 28% more things, or you're going to use it to go home 28% earlier. It's just an example of the many ethical questions that come up when you're using AI. So when you use AI to realize its benefits, there's three broad categories of things that you can do. The first is writing or generating. So you can say something like, write a privacy policy for my website. Or let's say you just had a fight with Bob and you want to send him a flame of an email and you go out, you know what, I think this is a bit too confrontational. We need to tone it down a bit. Well, the AI can adapt the tone in the email to something which is more conciliatory and collaborative. Or if it's a 500-word screed, the AI can not only change the tone, it can condense it down to something which is shorter. And if you really don't want to send it without somebody else looking at it, but you don't want to show it to anybody, you can ask the AI, hey, critique this. What are the strong and weak parts of the argument? After writing or drawing, the next category of things you can do is finding an answer. Brainstorming. It's great for brainstorming. Find me 5 topics for my blog, or asking questions like what is, using Perplexity, or extracting data, pull data off of the web. ChatGPT 4o that was released last week, but you can now upload a spreadsheet to it and it will do analysis on the spreadsheet. It can extract value and data from the spreadsheet for you. The third category is taking an action. I don't know if you noticed in this meeting, there's at least one note taker in this meeting. Often they're made by companies called Otter or Fathom, and they will take and summarize the meeting and list action items for you. If you're a social media marketer, you can upload social posts and ask it to score the sentiment. Or if you're like me, I'm a marketing person, I'm not a legal person. So if I get a vendor contract, I can ask the AI, are the terms and conditions of this contract fair? Or what should I be worried about in this contract? And the AI can help you with that. But you put these three things together, and what you get is efficiency and effectiveness. You can do more and you can do things better, and it can probably do more than you had previously imagined. Now, before we move off of this, I want to bring your eyes up to the cute robot in the upper right-hand corner again. Since this slide is about the good of AI, I asked Gemini to give me a happy robot with angel wings and a halo to symbolize goodness. And Gemini gave me 4 robots. The other 3 robots all had the angel wings coming out of the head of the robot because the AI understands, angel wings, they're on the side, but it did not understand where angel wings go on the body. Another example of the limitations of AI. So with all the good things you can do with AI, you think people will become more comfortable with it as they use it more. Now, the reality is that's not what happens. So here's another study from BCG from the end of last year. Your x-axis here is the number of different AI services a survey respondent has used, and it ranges from 0, meaning they've never used AI before, all the way over to 8. In today's world, if you've used 8 different AI services, it makes you a power user. Now, your y-axis over here is the percent of respondents either expressing excitement or expressing concern. So if you start here at 0, people have never used AI before, you see what you would expect, which is you've got a low level of excitement and a very high level of concern. Now, after they use it for the first time, the level of concern drops, as you would expect, and the level of excitement goes way up, as you would expect. Now, you're probably all reading ahead and have seen the end of the graph, and something unexpected happens, which is the people who use AI the most are the most excited about it. And the people who use AI the most are also the most concerned about it. So why do people who thoroughly understand AI very concerned about it? Let me show you a couple of reasons. The first reason is biased and incorrect information. Now, the sources of bias aren't just, hang on, I'm fixing my pen here, aren't just in the training data. Obviously, there's a lot of junk on the web. But the source of bias can also be the model itself. Let me give you an example. When OpenAI first released ChatGPT, you could go into it and say, please give me a poem about President Biden, and I write this great prosaic piece about Biden. And then when you said, please give me a poem about President Trump, it would then say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It violates my community standards. It would be divisive. So there was bias built into the control rails of the model. It's the same thing recently with Gemini. They haven't fixed this issue in the past year. It's still in multiple models where you could go to Gemini and you could ask it for images of the founding fathers of the United States. And what it returned was a racially and gender diverse set of images that did not reflect who the actual people were. And that's because there's what's called a translation layer in the models, where it takes your prompt and it translates it and augments it into something that the AI can more effectively work with. And there was a DEI lens in that translation layer that was skewing the outputs. That's now been fixed. In terms of incorrect information, remember I said these models were all trained on past data. So GPT 4.0, that was released last week, has a training data cutoff date of October 2023. So if you ask the model, give me a summary of what's going on in the Ukraine and Gaza wars today, it can't do that, or it can't give you an accurate summary because it has no idea of anything that's happened past October of 2023. Data privacy and security concerns. If you know what things like GDPR, CCPA, and HIPAA mean, you know what this is. If you have company confidential information, if you're in a regulatory environment, you need to understand that anything you load into the cloud for the AI could be used to train the AI, and your data may show up in one of your competitors' answers when they use the AI. There is no clear and rock solid assurance of privacy or security when you load data up into the AI. IP and copyright liability. There's 2 sides to this issue. Currently, you cannot copyright anything that comes out of an AI. If you come up with a great logo, if you come up with a great tagline, your competitors can use it because you can't copyright stuff that comes out of an AI. You also have the issue of the AI giving you material which is copyrighted or owned by somebody else. Now, If you look at this slide, you can notice there aren't any cute robots in the upper right-hand corner because I wanted to make a point here. So I didn't want to put a devil robot on here. I just wanted a angry robot on here to illustrate the bad side of AI. So I created this prompt here. Give me a robot with glowing red eyes. And what Gemini gave me was this guy. It gave me Darth Vader with red eyes. Clearly, this is an IP and copyright violation, and Disney and Lucasfilm would like to talk to me about it. Now, Darth Vader is really easy to recognize, but there could be things coming out of the AI that you don't recognize, that you don't understand as a copyright violation, and you don't want the first time you know about this problem to be when the legal department gives you a takedown notice. Next up, hallucinations. The models don't know things. If they don't know things, they have a propensity to guess. How often do the models guess? Well, here's a table of hallucinations for different models. Let's just focus on the top row. ChatGPT-4, up until a week ago, was widely considered to be the most advanced and best model out there for text. If you look at this, ChatGPT-4 hallucinated in this test at a rate of 3%. That means if you ask GPT-4 100 questions, it will lie to you on 3 of the answers, and it will not tell you which 3 answers it lied on. User beware. Reputational and business risk. A Chevy dealer down in California implemented a AI-driven chatbot. Very quickly, the AI chatbot was tricked into selling Chevy Silverado pickup trucks, 2 for 1. One price, 2 trucks. Mediocrity. Let me give you 2 examples here of mediocre outputs from the AI. First of all, I was at a panel about a month ago about using HR in recruiting. And all 3 recruiters said to a woman up on the stage, we can tell when you use ChatGPT to write your resume because it all sounds the same. There is no character. It is flat. It all looks the same. Let me give you another example here. As I went to Perplexity and said, look, I'm a small marketing company. How do I differentiate myself from my larger competitors? And Perplexity came back and said, oh, tell them you're cheap. You don't have any overhead. You're the cheapest option out there. Let me tell you, folks, as a marketing person, if I'm coming to you and saying the main reason you should hire me is because I'm cheap, don't hire me. Don't use the AI. Now, these problems are all insurmountable in one way, shape, or form. First of all, you need guardrails. You can actually ask a lot of these GPTs what the confidence level in the answer is. What parts of the answer are you most and least confident about? What parts of the answer have the least amount of data behind them? You can also look for AI models that use what's called constitutional AI. So Anthropic, for example, in their Claude 3 model is a constitutional AI. That means that there is a set of guidelines that are used to guide how the model operates, and they make those guidelines public. In contrast, OpenAI, that produces the GPT models everyone talks about, just had their super alignment team, which is essentially their trust and safety team, dismantled because their 2 top leaders quit and the rest of the team was disbanded across the organization. So 2 very, very different approaches to trust and clarity. For accuracy, you can use the memory and the context to load up your own data. You can also use what's called a RAG. A RAG is a fancy way of saying hooking up the AI into your own proprietary database. That's a lot of work, so memory and context can be a better way to do it, but RAG is worth the effort if you absolutely have to have the right answer. For example, if you're doing customer service support. Privacy. The gold standard for privacy is to have your own model on your own servers behind your own firewall. Small businesses can't afford to do that. So a lot of these models have like an incognito mode or the ability to delete history. But that essentially becomes trust me, trust that I will actually handle your data the way I said I would. Now, if I take you back to this hallucination table here for just a moment, these GPT models were built by OpenAI. These Llama models here, Llama are probably the biggest and most powerful, most successful open source models, but they were built by Meta, which owns Facebook. So if you're using any GPT that was built on the Llama LLMs, you're essentially saying, I trust Facebook to use my data responsibly. I personally don't. Copyright. One way you can get around copyright issues is to use models that have only been trained on things where the clear legal right is known. So for example, Adobe It has an image generator, a backfill creator, and Adobe Firefly's product is all built on images that they claim that they own. And as part of the license agreement, they will indemnify you if there's any legal actions that happen because you used one of their images. Now, the last two things on this page are human factors. The first is disclosure. In my opinion, and Mike's opinion as well, you should always disclose to clients and customers that you're using AI. So for example, in this presentation, you can see whenever we have an AI generated image, we have a footnote that says not only that's AI generated, but what tool we use to generate it. To us, that's the ethical thing to do. And then finally, the most important thing is human in the loop. I encourage you to think about these new generative AIs as working at the same level as an intern. Think of your marketing intern, for example. You're not going to have your marketing intern writing blog posts and putting them up on the web, I hope, without some human taking a look at it. Have a human in the loop to review and fact check before publishing. Okay, so that's pros and cons. Let's talk about implementation. I've laid out a four-step process here for picking and implementing AI. Step one is the problem. Step two is about setting the boundary conditions. Step three is actually going and finding it. And step four is the implementation and the iteration. Now, over here in step one with the problem, the key word is problem. You should not have a technology in search of a problem. We should not have a solution in search of a problem. It should be reversed. It should be the problem in search of a solution. You should be saying to yourself, what are my three biggest time sucks? What are my three biggest pain points? What are my three biggest uses of money in my business? Now, how can I solve that with AI? So it needs to be a problem-led approach. Then you get into your boundary conditions. If you care about security, privacy, regulatory, legal, IP issues, you need to identify that up front because that's going to skew which model you choose and how. Along with that is your budget. Free tools. You get what you pay for. In AI as you do everything else. There's free tools out there that can do amazing things, and based on your problem, it might be quite sufficient. Frankly, myself, for my problems, and we'll talk about some of my problems in a couple of pages here, the free tools are sufficient. If you need something better because you're actually using and creating content that's going to go public, you can subscribe. It's 20, 30 bucks a month. And then you have custom solutions. Now, custom solutions are a much bigger deal. They're a much bigger lift, and they're going to cost you anywhere from tens and hundreds of thousands up to millions and tens of millions of dollars. But start with free and work your way up the hierarchy there. In terms of the search, I'm highlighting standalone and integrated tools. And here's why this distinction is important, because the tool that you need, you might already have. You might already have it in your toolbox. So if you have Microsoft 365, if you have HubSpot, you have Marketo, you have Salesforce, all these tools have really good AIs already integrated into them. You may not have to go find another tool because you have the tool in your toolbox already. Experimenting and testing. The key thing here is the A/B testing. These tools are not all the same. It's not just the GUIs and interfaces are different, it's the outputs are different. So for example, in the same way that I have a different style than Mike that you'll see in just a minute here, the AIs have different styles. So ChatGPT has a much more matter-of-fact style. Anthropic's Claude has a much more literary style. So if you're writing user and owner manuals, you might want to use ChatGPT. If you're writing warm, friendly blog posts, you might want to use Anthropic's Claude. So always try multiple tools and see one which works better. And finally, implementing and scale. Don't fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. Just because you implemented it doesn't mean you need to use it if it doesn't work. If you get it and it's not working, walk away from it. And then iteration, these tools are changing so fast. Keep up with the tools because there might be a better tool out there in 6 months or a year. So before we move on to Q&A, I want to quickly take you up to the cute robot again. The robot is actually really good. I didn't see any errors in the robot, but if you look at the apples, a lot of these apples aren't attached to the apple tree. They're actually floating. So close, but no cigar. So questions. Grace, do we have any questions?
Let's see. Yes. How would you answer? AI seems to be changing rapidly. How do you recommend that I keep up with it all?
So I'll tell you how I keep up with it. Good question. First of all is newsletters. Because it's a very dynamic field, newsletters are kind of the most fast and real-time thing you can get. So I subscribe to a number of newsletters. Probably the most useful is something called the Neuron. Like a neuron in your brain, it's the Neuron. There's also the TLDR, that's TL:DR for too long didn't read. TLDR has newsletters on 20 different topics. I'm subscribed to their AI, their marketing, and their design newsletters. And because so much of what's happening in marketing design is around AI, I get flavors of AI in all three of them. There's also the Not a Bot newsletter. All these newsletters tend to focus on the nuts and bolts, the what and how of AI. If you're more curious about the why, the more philosophical stuff behind it, Ethan Mollick at the University of Pennsylvania has something called One Useful Thing, which is both, I believe it's a Substack as well as an email newsletter. I get my inbox every day. Podcasts, anything from Kara Swisher is always good. Hard Fork from the New York Times. The Neuron also has a podcast that gives you about a 15-minute deep dive on different takes. And then I'm also going to a lot of conferences and meetups and that type of thing. Grace, anything else?
Thank you. I think that's all the questions for now.
Cool. Thanks, Grace. So next up on our agenda is marketing AI. So for marketing AI, what I've done here is I've listed 10 different marketing functions, and I've listed 5 different AI-driven tools for each of those functions. So 50 tools on this page. Now, you all know that this isn't all the functions with marketing. I'll tell you from my research, this isn't all the tools that are out there. There are literally hundreds of AI-driven tools out there for marketing. So your big takeaway from this slide is figure out what your problem is and then go Google it. Or you can ask your favorite AI what tools are out there. I've done both, and you'll get slightly different answers. But before we move off this, let me highlight 4 tools for you. The first one is Perplexity, perplexity.ai. It's a chatbot. It's more geared around search and research. What I like about Perplexity is it actually gives you sources. So it gives you the answer, and above it, it gives you a list of sources. So you can see where it got its data from. And you can actually knock sources out. If you're like, you know what, source number 4, I don't like it, I don't think it's credible, you can uncheck it, and then it will recalculate its answer based on the sources that you have allowed. So I have a lot more trust in the results from Perplexity than I do from anything else. Next up, Adobe Firefly. We talked about this, rights-based images. Descript, if you've ever had to edit a video, you know, it's really, really difficult to take out the ums and ahs or to take out question number 3 because it was inappropriate. What Descript does is Descript actually makes a transcript of your video. Then you can go in and edit the text, and when you hit return, it will go back to the video and edit the video automatically to match what you have done in the text. Huge time saver. The last thing I want to highlight is Blueprint down here in the lower left. Blueprint is produced by a company in Oregon called Vision and Story. They're a branding agency based in Eastern Oregon. The founders of Vision and Story have decades of experience in branding, and they'd be happy to come to your facility and do a huge brand workshop and interview people and customers and that type of thing. If you don't have that time or if you don't have that money, what they've done is they've taken all their expertise and used it to train a tool that you can use on a subscription basis to figure out your brand's unique value proposition. So the tool has AI-driven workflows, AI-driven forms, AI-driven chatbot, all trained around brands. So it's a really neat way to use AI very, very tangibly in a marketing sense. So what do I personally use? At this point, I've been talking nonstop from 31 minutes. I think I've demonstrated I can come up with enough words. My problem is actually coming up with the right word. Sometimes I'll have a sentence where I just get stuck on one word. The one word is not flowing well. So for example, I created this sentence here. We have growth initiatives to help the firm grow. Stylistically, it's a bad sentence. So I took this sentence, I dropped it in Perplexity and said, rewrite it, don't use the word grow or growth. And what it came back with was the phrase strategic endeavor. Now, here's a slight confession. I actually really don't use Perplexity to find the right word. I use Perplexity to find a new direction, a new way to go. So strategic endeavor gives me a new way of thinking where I can go down and find new words. So I use that to find words. And as good as I am in words, I'm really lousy with images. So I have loved, and I really don't like stock images because like you can tell when someone's using stock photography. I can assure you there's no stock photography in this presentation because I wrote prompts like this one here. Now, Note the robot, which you saw back in the Q&A page. I call it out in my prompt. It should have red trim and a clear background. What I actually got was I got a red robot, not red trim. And then the background is clear of clutter, but it's not clear in the traditional graphic sense. I used the free Gemini tool and I got exactly what I paid for. The final tool that I've been using is the colors tool from Musel. Asking me to pick a set of colors that fit together is a risky proposition. So I wrote this prompt here and I got this color strip over here on the right. Now, the first time I wrote this, the prompt ended right here at the pure white clouds and snow. My color palette always ended right here. It gave me this beautiful palette of blues and grays and whites, but I always want an accent color. You can tell I'm putting red markings all over this presentation. I always like an accent color to make a point. So I went back and asked it for the warm hues of a summer sunset, and modifying the prompt gave me the yellow color that you see here. So these are things that I'm using AI for. So before I turn the reins over to Mike, any questions from anybody else at this point?
Let's see. Yeah, how would you answer? I just want to try AI. What one tool should I start with?
I would probably say Gemini or ChatGPT 4o or Perplexity. I think the critical thing is just to take stuff for fun and just type it into one of those three tools and use it. They're all free. See which interface you like best. See whose results you like best. I like in images. I don't like the images that come out of the Bing image generator. They're just too cartoonish. Versus Gemini gives me stuff that's much more photorealistic. So try one, see what matches your style, and use it. So at this point, I'm sorry, Grace, any other questions before I move off?
Yeah, no more right now. Thank you.
Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. And Mike, I believe you can grab the reins and go now.
Thanks, Doug. So what I wanted to do now is we're taking from the marketing phase to asking that question, which generative AI tool do we use? I'm going to go into walking through a little bit more about the application process in a sales environment and how you can find contacts and then work them through your own pipeline to end up closing deals. So as Doug shared on his slide of all the different marketing tools, here are 48 different sales tools you can use, but a lot of them, some of them are good, some of them are bad. Part of what we can do as we get to the Q&A sessions is talk about what is the best tool for you or on your price point. So, looking at these, LinkedIn Outreach is really the best B2B. LinkedIn is the best B2B channel for a sales team. And so when I'm in the LinkedIn environment, I highly recommend a tool called Meet Alfred. Meet Alfred will allow you to connect your sales navigator, which is an add-on in your LinkedIn environment, for your sales team to then connect Sales Navigator to Meet Alfred, which allows you to then export your contact lists of if you've done ABM marketing or talked about titles of a certain category and find VPs of marketing, CMOs, and then you can then organically reach out to them and grow your followers on LinkedIn. So it would say, "Hi, blank." You can customize it, but it is an AI tool where it would say, "Hi, Doug, I've found your profile interesting, so let's make a connection." And that in-mail would go out, and that connection request would go out after I've already interacted with his profile using the tool. It's all automated, and liking one of his posts, and then asking for a connection request. So it seems very organic in how it's done, but it's all running on the back end. There's nothing that you have to go through on a regular basis to implement. And you can run 3 concurrent campaigns at any one time. And I'll show on the next slide of how that can scale and scope and really be impactful for you. Another tool that is a great utilization on the sales side is a tool called Apollo.io. Apollo.io is a great data resource. It has 270 million records in it. There are paid data sources that you can get, but if you have a sales team that needs to get contacts and you're on a budget, where you have someone who's maybe managing some SDRs, that to go and find some contacts, I would highly recommend using Apollo.io. You can go through and you can search by name, you can search by title, you can search through this specific company, which gives you a really great opportunity to identify exactly who in that organization you can reach. The accuracy, they claim it's almost 100%. In my experience, it's more like 85, 90%. Depending if it's more of a Fortune 500 company, those contacts are easier to find than it is perhaps a local nonprofit. So depending on who your ideal client profile is and who your target market is, Apollo is a great tool. I use the free version to get all those contacts, but if you get a paid subscription, you can also continue to do A/B testing. So you're testing your subject line, if you have emojis, things of that nature. Also, you can integrate it in your own CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce, but I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on that. Another tool that I recommend as kind of a game changer in the business development field is SendSpark. So SendSpark, as we all know, people like to watch videos more than they like to read emails. Getting emails from a business development or salesperson isn't something that someone wants exactly to receive. So SendSpark's kind of changed the game, and they allow people to create a customized video and a custom landing page that you would send the link to your prospects at, and they can go and they can view this video. So it allows your sales team to create these videos, embed them into a specific landing page, and so they can email their contact list. So for instance, you could say, okay, I'm a biz dev person doing ABM marketing, so I'm going after the Microsoft account. I got 5, 6, 7 contacts in there on my contact list. I can create a very customized specific, here's my value prop as to why Microsoft should be working with us for X, Y, and Z reasons, and maybe be an icebreaker, or maybe you've already sent your proposal and you haven't heard back from them. So you would send a SendSpark and say, hey, Steve or whomever, haven't heard from you. I'd love to hear back, get some feedback on this proposal so we can get going, as I know that it's deadline, whatever that is. It's a simple tool that you can implement, and there's a free version. There's almost free versions of all these, but as Doug mentioned, you get what you pay for. I would recommend you would have a sales manager or someone in a leadership role on the BD team that could go and be like the Chuck Yeager test pilot for some of these tools, and see if you want to implement them as part of your tool set and for your biz dev team. And then last but not least is a really cool tool that's on here a couple places. So it's called Clay. It looks like Play-Doh there. You may remember it back when you were a kid. So Clay is a very detailed tool from a sales assistant standpoint. So say you've created your LinkedIn list from Meet Alfred of everyone that is within a certain company, but you're like, you know what, I don't have all the prospects I want. So I want more contacts. And so you need to identify different companies in a specific category. So you go, okay, I have my ideal client profile. It's companies 200 to 500, 500 to 1,000. You can go through and select company size by employee count. You can also select by revenue, and then you can go through and then subsequently select people by titles. Then you can select, if it's a B2B or a B2C company, you can get very granular data as to what their profile is. And then you can export that and get your actual contact information. And so this is all running in the background. It's a paid version. It's a very robust tool, but in a series of minutes, probably 30 minutes, you can get your ideal client profile, all the contacts, all their email addresses, and then you can export it because they have APIs connecting that tool Clay to HubSpot or Salesforce, or there may be, you can just export a CSV file that you could then put into maybe a low-cost version of MailChimp. So it's a great tool to find those lists and get them and export them. And I would highly recommend it. As again, there's many here that you can look at, but those are the 4 that I would recommend. But as Doug shared on his marketing slides, I want to share with you my favorite AI tools. And so, a lot of people like myself in business development and prospecting, we have to do a lot of outreach, a lot of cold outreach. And in addition to, building our network on LinkedIn, we have to go and break the ice. And so one thing is if your sales team isn't a bunch of, Dan Wyden copywriters, that you can use this tool called Copy AI. And so, for instance, say you went to a trade show and you collected a bunch of business cards and you met someone there that may be a prospect. But so you look them up on LinkedIn, you can copy their LinkedIn URL and then put it into their tool on Copy AI, and it will pull the data from their LinkedIn profile to create kind of an icebreaker email that you can send them. The other prompts that you put in there are, what is your service offering? What is your unique selling proposition? Basic fundamentals of marketing that you can plug into that, and then it will generate. You can't see it on the right, so I'm not even going to attempt to read it, but it is a very customized output of what the email would be. And as Doug said, and I'll reiterate, you shouldn't just copy and paste any AI output and send it out. You need to have that human touch. And so, this, say, as in my example here, this is someone you met at a trade show. Well, then, hey, I saw you at the seminar at this trade show on this date. Put some customization to it, filter it out, and then then you're off to the races. Sometimes I've provided email copy for the teams I'm working with or working for, and this is a simple tool to like get off to the races and get rid of writer's block. Another tool, as I was talking about on the previous slide, is Meet Alfred. So talking about LinkedIn prospecting, there are two things. Well, I think the number one thing we don't like on LinkedIn are the sales in-mail outreach. And so, as I was saying with Meet Alfred, you connect it with Sales Navigator, which is paid for, which you have to pay for within the LinkedIn ecosystem. And then Meet Alfred will create, 3 active campaigns, but you can create up to 50 different campaigns within that. And so for a real life example, I signed up for Meet Alfred connected to Sales Navigator in July of 2022 when I was working at another agency. And I identified, we were doing ABM marketing, so looking at specific accounts and specific categories in quick service food and also retailers and apparel companies. Targeted them specifically, so those brands then selected their CMOs, their VPs of digital or VPs of directors of marketing, and then went through that sequence and the workflow of, okay, interact with their LinkedIn profile, like one of their posts, and then it will give you a drop-down menu of between 1 hour to 10 days to ask for a connection request. And so again, it seems more organic. And so then you can deploy those campaigns. And as I said, you can have 3 going on at any certain time. And those lists are extracted from Sales Navigator, and the lists can be about 2,500 people in size. And through my experience, I had about a 30% conversion rate on those requests. Again, all automated. I would customize the email, would say, hi, Alice, this is Mike. I see we have similar connections, or tie some type of obvious relevant connection, and then send those connection requests. And the reason this tool is so powerful is, I increased my LinkedIn connections of viable contacts. These aren't the Glengarry leads where everyone's going to close on every prospect, but these are the right titles to the right companies and the contacts that are the good names of people to then convert from contacts to leads and to close deals. So over the course of a year, I increased my LinkedIn connections 366%. So I went from about 3,000 LinkedIn connections to I currently now have 11,000 LinkedIn connections of people who are qualified in Fortune 500 companies, CMOs, VPs, and directors of marketing. And after those connections are made, the data that comes from Meet Alfred also, you ping people on their birthdays, on their work anniversaries, and on new jobs. And so it's a great tool, highly recommend it. And then last but not least is Clay, as I was reiterating the tool's power on the previous slide. Again, I've been tasked in all my agency jobs and also as a biz dev person, hey, we want to get these contacts at Adidas, or we want to get these contacts at Nike, or whatever the ideal client profile matches the customer that you want to get. So then you just use Clay. You can use Meet Alfred to go and do it organically, or if you need to get those contacts in an hour and you don't want to wait for that slow drip that goes through Meet Alfred, which seems more organic, which is my preferred method, you can use Clay, go through, identify the clients either by account or by company size and or revenue, and then titles, and then you get the export of that list that then you can connect to your API for HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever email marketing tool that you're using. These are all powerful tools and would really help reinforce the strength and scalability of your sales team. So at this point, I will take a breath, Grace, and see if we have any questions.
Let's see. Thank you, Mike. Here's a question. Are these AI sales tools affordable? How much is something like Meet Alfred monthly?
It's a good question. As Doug reiterated, free tools are you get what you pay for, but most all of these have a free trial, and I think something like Meet Alfred, for example, is something that I currently have. It's $59 a month. Allows me to do campaigns not only on LinkedIn, you can also do campaigns on X or Twitter. You can also do email campaigns within your own email system, and so that it's very robust in the different areas in which you can use it. I've just been scraping the surface with it within the LinkedIn environment.
Thank you. We also have a question from Susan. How long does it typically take to set up a sequence?
You can set up a sequence in probably a half an hour. If you go through your sales navigator, you can identify your saved contacts within that. You export that list, you save it as XYZ, whatever you want to save it as. Then you go to Meet Alfred. Meet Alfred is connected to your LinkedIn. Then there's a sync button. You click it, and it syncs everything, and then you can create a campaign. And then you go through the sequence of LinkedIn of how you want to do it. You can go directly to send email to ask for a connection request, but I always go through, interact with their profile, like one of their posts, and then after you like one of their posts, send a connection request within 1 to 5 days. And you can set that all up in real time. As I was just talking through it, you can contemplate how you want to do that, but you can do all that in a half an hour, and then the data will aggregate, and then it will start to deploy that information. I think within the day, you'll see the numbers going. And then within Meet Alfred, you get a dashboard that shows you how that campaign is going. It'll show you the progress of invitations sent, profiles interacted with, and it will show you the conversion rate of their acceptance on those requests. So it's great data that you can say, well, this is working or this isn't working. And you can customize each of your interactions to say, hi, so we have similar connections, or we have a great service offering. Maybe would you want to connect, and maybe we can talk about it. It's all customizable from that standpoint, but long answer to your short question, half an hour or less.
Wow, thank you. That's quick.
Yeah. Are there any other questions?
I think that's all for now.
Okay. So I will jump into getting into the hands-on with AI. So we want to give everyone an opportunity here. So Doug was mentioning earlier about the 3 R's of prompt writing, and the more detailed the prompt that you write, the better your output. And so the 3 R's of prompt writing are the role, the request, and then how are they related? Going through each of that. And remember that detailed prompt really will give you the better answer. And then also, if you find the AI tool, generative AI tool you prefer to use, that you would get a paid account, and so that you can then have data saved as you go on. So you would save the most effective prompts that you have in maybe a Google Sheet, and you would make sure you can use them. If you have an account, you can save those, and then that information can continue to learn within itself. So the chatbot's memory would be continually available to you. So that's a really important thing to realize. So, and then in the next slide, we'll get through an opportunity for each and every one of you to do some prompt writing and see if you want to do something in the research or writing or graphic element. So the role, first R, is tell the AI who is asking for the answer and why. So here's the example. So you're a content strategist working in the medical technology industry, and you're responsible for writing the company blog. So there we frame it in a very specific prompt. So you're not writing an email back. You could do that. You could put that in the prompt. You could say, I'm writing an article that wants to go in somewhere. Well, you wouldn't use AI because it should be original content. So knowing that you're within your own ecosystem, you're put in a very specific example, and here it is here. So that's the role. The request. So we really encourage you to define the specific action you want the AI to complete. As Doug mentioned earlier, you can synthesize a 5,000 word article or document into 50 words. And so, blog posts, typical length of a blog post is 200 to 500 words. 300 words, is a good size. So we say, please generate 5 concepts for a 300-word blog post on the use of motorized wheelchairs. So then the AI would then output to you, 5 different concepts. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, based on the prompt that you put in there. And then the third R is how are they related? So, what guardrails do we want to put on this to get as specific as possible, so that, as Doug mentioned earlier, you can put a lot of words in these prompts, but we want to get really finite to how they're used. So we provide a history, put the guardrails and other parameters that you want to have help answer this. So in this specific context of medical technology, we would say the blog needs to reference our new Zoom model wheelchair. Do not mention our competitor wheel crews. So again, you're not wanting to highlight anything in your competitors. You can put in any of your own nomenclature on your brand, and then you can quickly generate content for these blogs. So again, the many benefits of generative AI is the ability to scale and scope your marketing and sales team. And so now we're going to give you all an example, or not an example, an opportunity to try your own generative AI here. So we have 3 opportunities for you to do some of your own generative AI. Well, the first one is research. So I got research, we got writing, and we got graphics. So for a moment, you can either use the QR code, or depending on if you're on a laptop, you can use and type in the URL, and then you can make an option of what you want to do with this prompt. So Doug walked you through all of the different tools that we can use. So here are some that are example. He mentioned Perplexity, talked about Gemini, also here with Claude. So we would encourage you on your end to then either scan the QR code or type in the URL, and then type in a prompt. But in the bracketed part, you can put in your own words, what you want. So if you want to do research, how can I use generative AI to, and what an example that's important to you in your job as whatever, working in what industry. And then as you go through, for the same example for writing, rewrite the following sentence in the style of Kara Swisher. And then you can put in that context, or you can put, say, Kurt Vonnegut or whomever you want to put in there, and then put in your own prompt of what you want the output to be. And then graphics, as Doug illustrated throughout the whole presentation, of these cute robots that we had, that each one had a little bit, something that was a little bit different, or he had to go through and filter out exactly what was good and what was bad. So you can put on your end, create a cartoon or whatever image of a fat cat skiing down a mountain of spaghetti. Who wouldn't want to see that, right? Against the background of Geneva, Switzerland, and use a lot of whatever color you want in the image. So I'll give you an opportunity now to go through and scan one of these, or type in one of those URLs and use these prompts. I'll continue on, and you can continue to do this in the background. But what I want to do here as we conclude is, and open it up at the end for more questions and answers. So, as we have gone through all of this, Doug and myself, we want to make sure that, you can contact us if you think this content would be good for you or your team or your professional organization. And we'd be happy to arrange an in-person or virtual opportunity to walk through this in more detail. And we have our contact information there. We have our QR codes, our email address, our web URLs. And so feel free to contact either one of us to reach out. And then this concludes our presentation.